Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to another F1 Worldwide podcast, and you guys are very lucky at the moment because we just keep getting special guest after special guest, and I'm very excited to introduce today's guest. He is the kind of operator, what should I say, operator, I suppose it's technically owner of the channel, but yeah, the guy behind the channel that is...
Just housing my name.
Exactly. The guy behind the channel, as you can tell with the accent there, is Josh Revell. So Josh, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. It's fantastic to have you.
Pleasure to be here, and well done. You've actually got the pronunciation of my last name correct, because... I remember there was a few Americans and British, God bless them, they were pronouncing it Josh Revell. I know it's how it's spelled, but not quite there. But yep, Josh Revell. That's how it's said.
I think
Rebel like Rebel.
Yeah, I think we have like some chocolate sweet over here, Revels. So that's how I kind of.
Yes. When I was living over there, I remember seeing that. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, you got these here? Sweet. But yeah, no, that's how it's pronounced. And yeah, again, pleasure to be on here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. And so obviously, I think, guys, if you haven't already, I know over the Christmas period, you really kind of blew up, and everything kind of went from strength to strength, which was amazing. So the best way I think probably to describe, correct me if I'm wrong, your channel is it's a light-hearted look. Quite actually a lot of the junior series stuff as well, and some series you might not, and then some guys who were within F1 who a little bit more kind of obscure topics, I would say, and you giving your interesting take and just interesting knowledge and background. Anything to add on your channel on that front? Yeah,
well, I mean, the channel really sprung up over a desire to sort of almost fill in a gap. Like, if you wanted to see current events or get a more sort of grounded opinion or take or coverage on anything in modern F1, then you go to people like, F1 Fanatics, Aldas, of course, Cranky Yankee, Tomo, who's also just recently come up. They all offer those types of views, but, I was sort of inspired really through channels that I've seen in the past in other sort of areas where they took this sort of light-hearted view towards stuff, added in little bits of, style toward their videos, but still covered it, to an extent where you were going to be just as informed as if you were watching, a normal video. So I remember that garbage video that I made back a couple of years ago, Andrea Moda, that was intended to be, more serious. But it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. But then, I can't remember what the first video I made was. I think it was actually initially UGE Day. And I found the style I was looking for, which is what you see nowadays. And I just thought, this is fun. And so continued doing it. And, of course, it got to 1,000. And then all of a sudden, when the Dan Ticktum one, ironically, was shared after he signed with Williams, it just grew and then grew and then grew, and now it's gone to a point where, the lines are sort of blurred. Like, to the right of me, I've got a sort of congratulatory sort of piece of paper from my younger brother, and, he's the biggest fan ever, and, saying, well done on 1,000 subscribers, and now you look at the sub count now, and you're like, yeah, it's gone a bit on from there, hasn't it? But, it's great. And the motivation to still do videos for fun is still there. But the added support of, I can't remember how many subs it is now, but it's just fantastic, nevertheless. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, man. And your videos are a lot of fun, and I think you're absolutely correct. You found your niche in the market in your own style, and I think... you're absolutely brilliant at it, and your videos are nice and bite-sized, nice and enjoyable on that front, although I know you kind of have a Rag and Nathan video coming out, which is one of your longer ones, around 25 minutes, so that'll be exciting for those. So guys, if you haven't already checked out Josh's channel, please do go over and subscribe to it. Absolutely fantastic content that he puts out, and he really enjoyable and real kind of asset to the F1 YouTube community that just seems to be expanding exponentially recently. People popping up, and it's just absolutely fantastic to be a part of. But he did mention it there in terms of one of his videos that he has done, but we're going to take a more kind of deeper and serious look, because this is quite a serious case for a lot of people. And we are going to look at Dan Ticktum and his controversial career to date. And there is certainly a lot for us to kind of get our teeth stuck into on this topic. So we'll be nice to him in terms of we'll start off.
In the main.
we'll
Can't guarantee anything.
Exactly, but we'll start off with his karting career, and so I've got here that he is one of only 2 drivers to secure the Grand Slam of British National Cadet titles, and then obviously went on to the WSK and Euro Series and Masters Series and finished both as the highest placed rookie. And then he won the in 2013 the Andrea Margatti Trophy, which obviously previous winners are Juan Carlo Fisichella, former F1 driver Robert Kubica, and most recently Daniel Kvyat. So when he was in his junior karting career, progressing on to Formula 4 in 2015, I believe, he made his F4 debut. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But yeah, what were your...
It seems to be all correct so far, yeah.
What was your thoughts? I mean, probably you can see why there was a lot of excitement around Dan Ticktum after that karting career. So what were your thoughts on his karting career, Josh?
Well, the stats speak for itself, doesn't it? There's a fair amount of drivers who go through their karting career, they don't really achieve anything, and yet they get into cars and they all of a sudden start to fly. But with Ticktum, it was pretty much almost everywhere he went, success followed. It wasn't a coincidence. I mean, he was legitimately pretty talented back then. He still is today. But nevertheless, as you said, one of only 2 drivers to get the British Grand Slam, and succeeding in the WSK series in both Europe and the Masters series, obviously the Andrea Margatti Trophy. People may shun that stuff, but nevertheless, it's all there. He's achieved that all, and definitely a good precursor to his racing career. But yeah, that was probably the most calm period of his racing career, that's for sure.
I definitely agree, and I think this may be a grounding in some of the problems were to follow, because obviously, like you were right, he obviously had a lot of success, and naturally around a lot of circles, I believe there was a lot of excitement around him as a talent, and then obviously progressing into Formula 4 in 2015. I think when you're so young and you get so much excitement around you, you can either go one or 2 ways, and if you don't have the right people around you, it can be quite difficult to handle that pressure and handle it in the right way of not letting things go to your head. But obviously in 2015 he was competing in MSA Formula, which is obviously now officially the Formula 4 Championship, British F4 Formula 4 Championship. He was leading the early rounds, and then this is probably the first career-defining moment to date. And that incident where under safety car, he sped to overtake several cars and take out his opponent, Ricky Collard. And that got him a 2-year ban, with 1 year of it suspended, I think it was, if he didn't commit a similar sort of offence or a bad offence. He had to serve 1 year straight away, but then obviously I think his other year has been suspended in that front. So your thoughts on that first major incident in Dan Ticktum's career, Josh?
I think really that sort of incident it was just really terrible for him, in the sense that it's something that people will just never forget, and people still don't forget it to this day, despite the fact it's been 5 years now. And really, you can't sort of argue with that. It was inexcusable to do something like that, to use your car as a weapon, irrespective of whether Ricky Collard was in the wrong or not. You don't use your car as a weapon against someone else. And so the 2-year ban imposed by, I believe it was the MSA, or was it the British Racing Drivers Club? It was either one of those, but it was fully warranted, and had no sympathy for him when he did that. But he got out after 1 year, and he returned. I think it was toward the end of the next year. And at that stage, it was like, okay, you've served your sentence, but for goodness sake, don't do anything like that again, because it's just it sets a bad precedent for everyone, not least him. But yeah. Kind of a sign of things to come, really, of just how hot-headed he could have been back then, for sure. Definitely a horrid time for him, and most definitely for the rest of the F4 grid. That was a great F4 grid as well, might I just add. I mean, who else was there? I think Lando Norris was there as well. Of course, Ricky Collard, who's a pretty big part of the BMW GT effort nowadays. Toby Sowery as well, yeah, it was a good, talented field, and he was a leader as well in his first year of racing. So, it was a bad end to the season, but up until then, he was still proving his talent.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. There's nothing forgivable about using your car as a weapon. And I think you use the example of obviously the injuries that happened to Billy Monger, where obviously, he had to have both legs amputated, and that was due to a head-on crash in British F4, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, and that was back then in 2015, where you imagine the cars wouldn't have been as safe as what they were when Billy had his accident. And it is a trouble, and it showed signs of being hot-headed, but like you said, he did serve his sentence, and he has the unfortunate... We've seen incidents like this, not as extreme as under safety car and shunting someone else, but you have seen the likes of, well, one of the all-time greats, Michael Schumacher, trying to shunt out Jacques Villeneuve to try and win the title. It was 1997, I believe, that incident, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And, Senna and Prost, they both obviously were suspect in terms of some of their collisions on track. So it isn't unheard
1990 especially. I mean, it wasn't as extreme, but... And there'll be people that are going to absolutely ridicule me over this, but can I just ask you for a second? 1990 Japanese Grand Prix. Senna had no intention of backing out of that, and really that was super dangerous what he did going into turn 1, and I've been to that circuit. It's not it looks a lot bigger on TV than it actually does in real life, and one thing gone wrong there, and cars have flown over that fence at the end of turn 1. There's a lot more worse consequences than simply just ramming someone off the road. So, obviously...
No, I absolutely agree with you.
Ticktum, unfortunately.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on those incidents, and those... But you can't understand them. But they were in the heat of the biggest prize in motorsport, which is a Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship. I mean, obviously, you can argue back in the 50s, winning Le Mans was a bigger one, and 60s for a driver. But yes, absolutely huge. You can understand Dan Ticktum is for a title in F4, but I think it's the pressure that these youngsters feel from a very early age. They're expected to progress to the next level. They've got to not only impress, but they've got to, win and show enough potential to be picked up by someone. And Dan obviously has the unfortunate incident of growing up in a era where social media is becoming a bigger and bigger influence. And I imagine if the kind of Schumacher and Senna incidents had happened in modern times, they certainly would have been ridiculed a lot more than necessarily they are on reflection now. I think they're quite easy to sweep under the carpet and remember the great things they did rather than the slightly suspect things they did.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
And so, obviously, like you said, he served the year ban and then came back into Formula 3 at that stage with Carlin, I believe. And 2016, I think he did all right. I think he only just competed in the one race. But in 2017, probably one of his biggest things to date, he was announced as a Red Bull Junior. So that was huge for him at the time. So what are your thoughts on Red Bull, your memories and thoughts of kind of Dan Ticktum obviously being picked up at that stage and joining the Red Bull Academy?
To be honest, I think back then I was a bit shocked, given the history, because, a worldwide organisation such as Red Bull, I don't think that they want to attach themselves to a controversial brand. Of course, Rich Energy does, but I mean, the guy who runs that little venture is a bit, shall we say, interesting.
Yep.
But, irrespective, I was pretty gobsmacked that they, even after what happened, that they would pick him up so soon. But of course, he was given Red Bull backing. He wasn't a part of the junior team back then, but he was, he did have Red Bull backing right up from, I believe, his karting days and definitely in Formula 4. So I think the, shall we say, the way that Red Bull looked upon him was pretty favourable, even after what happened. And I guess they were expecting a born-again Ticktum out of all of this, but it wasn't quite like that. In his previous year, of course, he, in 2016, returned with Carlin at Hockenheim, and then he raced at Macau, and he wasn't too bad, especially with double R racing. So, yeah, he's got a pretty good connection with Macau, that's for sure. Yeah,
he certainly does, and we'll bring on to Macau very, very shortly. But I think having that Red Bull link, I think you're absolutely right. Like we said at the start of this video, his record in karting kind of speaks for itself, and hugely talented. And if you've picked him up there, and obviously, like we said, pre-incident, he was leading the championship. In British F4, so he was clearly showing talent there as well. And I think we've all seen the Red Bull Academy. It can't be held responsible. You've got to be held responsible for your own actions. But I think certainly the standards that they keep for their drivers and expectations, like I think recently they said Tsunoda, they're expecting him to finish in the top 4 of F2, and with the grid as it stands and how he finished in F3, I think that's an incredibly bold statement to make. But it kind of puts in perspective the type of standards that they expect from their drivers. And as a young, we forget a lot of these guys are junior. As a young, talented driver, that sort of pressure, it's almost like that fight or flight type thing. And when you fight, you can make mistakes like Dan Ticktum did. But I think he made his debut in the GP3 series in 2017 as well, at Monza with Dams, and I think he finished on the podium, I believe, in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. In Abu Dhabi?
Yep, I can't remember whether or not it was the feature or the sprint race, but he did get a podium at Abu Dhabi. And he also did the Formula Renault Euro Cup series as well during 2017. And got a win at the Hungaroring and got 7th in the driver's standing. So it was a pretty good return to the seat full time. And, people may say, oh, they're just average results. And, my response to that is simply, even though it's a spec series, you should always only really be comparing to the teammates. I think when it comes to a team, and this is no offence, but I think there is a bit of a difference between a team such as Prema and Team Westtech, at least at this current time. For sure, they'd have probably better engineers, better organisation, whatever have you. And in recent years, I mean, Arden's stranglehold that they had on racing, especially back in the early 2000s with Formula 3000, it's not quite there anymore. So to be finishing where he did with Arden was quite decent back then, and I mean, relatively quiet, but he was still demonstrating why Red Bull had the faith in him. And yeah, of course, it all led up to November 2017, didn't it?
It did indeed, where I think this is where he really put his name back on the map. And he claimed victory in what is FIA Formula 3 World Cup, Macau GP, whatever you want to go for it. But it is a pretty illustrious title, and it's very highly respected within the junior categories. And I completely agree, by the way. Although spec series, the teams are different. I know me and Mark on the channel discussed the difference between the teams and kind of what to expect, because yes, it's a spec series, but it's the teams have different funding in terms of infrastructure and what they can produce, the race engineers, setups and everything like that. It isn't quite as level playing field as they would like you to make out. But yeah, in 2017, obviously with Ferdinand Habsburg and Sergei Sette Camara crashing in the final corner, he claimed victory in 2017, and then the following year he also won in 2018. So winning the race once is a pretty special achievement, but winning it twice in back-to-back years, it is a pretty special achievement, and you have to be very talented as a driver to be able to achieve that.
For sure. It is, it's one of those circuits where, I mean, granted, it is sort of a procession. If you can't pass down at Lisboa, you're pretty much in the mindset of, okay, I'll get him next time. I'll just follow him up this hill. Unless, of course, they make the mistake of headbutting one of the walls, which is pretty easy to do. But, of course, if they smack the wall, they're probably going to ricochet back into you, so you don't want that either. That first year, that was very exciting last lap, that's for sure, between Habsburg and Camara, and, dicing back and forth for the lead. And when Habsburg got that final lap, final corner, pass around the outside of Camara, I just thought that is the greatest thing of all time. Oh no, he's crashed into the wall. Camara went in, Habsburg went in, and then the shot went to the one peering down the front straight, and you just see Dan Ticktum and Lando Norris coming out of the final corner, and Dan Ticktum winning it. And I think my initial reaction was, really? I think I was in the same mindset that a lot of other, race fans are nowadays. This is the guy that used his car as a weapon, type of mindset. And I think I just really wasn't a big fan of him either, because, his attitude, just sort of rubbed me the wrong way. It rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But, I wouldn't necessarily call it a fluke. Again, we get back to, you can't win a race unless you finish it, sort of thing. Very similar circumstances to J.R. Hildebrand in Indy, and when Dan Weldon passed him on the straight, a couple hundred metres before the line, so bit lucky, yes, but still, he finished the race, he won the race, he would have got a podium irrespective of what happened, so pretty good effort then. And then 2018, that was his dominance. He was just the fastest person out there, and took it in pretty good fashion from Charles Leclerc, or Charles Leclerc, or I don't know how he pronounces his name. I've heard several different pronunciations. I'm still going with Charles Leclerc. But, to say that you convincingly beaten Charles Leclerc in a race weekend, especially around Macau, I think really that says enough, in terms of what Ticktum is like as a driver. So those 2 years at Macau definitely helped his career, and to a certain extent his image as well. It's just a pity that didn't quite carry over after that.
No, and we'll move on to the decline of the Red Bull partnership now. And so, obviously he's had that great success. It looks like, Red Bull's faith in him, has been repaid. Yes, I think we'll happily we'll talk about the attitude issues after we've kind of rounded off his junior career to date almost.
Yep.
From there, and obviously the links to now obviously being with Williams academy driver and with Dams and F2. But yes, obviously with Red Bull they were looking, I think, very much getting him into Formula 1, and we all know in Formula 1 now that you have to achieve a certain amount of super license points to be able to be allowed to compete within Formula 1. And so by doing this, it's a very strange one for Red Bull, but they seem to send them into the Asia rounds, and again, escaped me what was the first Asia series he went to, but that didn't work out, and then he went into Super Formula, which then obviously, having failed in the first 3 rounds of that, led to him and Red Bull parting ways, or him being sacked by Red Bull essentially.
Right. Do you mind if I back up 1 year, if I may, please?
You may.
Yep. Sweet. So 2018, we didn't actually get into the full season of that. That was when he competed full-time in the Formula 3 European Championship with Motorpark, and he was quite good. It was kind of the same situation as in F4. He led the first few rounds, and it seems as though, he's got this. And you got to think as well, the other drivers in there was Mick Schumacher, Marcus Armstrong, Robert Schwartzman, and that guy is... I'm begging him to have a really decent future, especially in Formula 1. But, I guess that's down to whether or not Schumi gets the points this year. But, yep, that bird. Sorry. But anyway, so, it was a pretty dominant year for the first half until Mick Schumacher started to pick up momentum. And then we're getting these interviews where he's talking about, the sudden upturn in pace being a bit suspect. He didn't outright call him cheating, but, people will sort of twist and bend the narrative to, make it, seem as though he's suggesting that they're cheating, and really it's not a good thing to be suggesting that sort of stuff. It was not a good outlook for him, and I think it really sort of fueled the fire even more for the people that didn't like him.
Yeah, I completely agree on that one.
But, irrespective of whether... And it was a little bit strange, how Schumi, especially the last year, he was sort of there or thereabouts, and then all of a sudden, he's winning races, he's getting pole positions. It's like, where did this come from? But you don't say it. That's something that really needs to be preached to him, Don't necessarily say what's on your mind because you're going to be broadcast to the world. And unfortunately, it wasn't relayed to him before he made that comment, which really hurt him.
I think his previous reputation is something that hurt him more with those comments as well, because I think if I remember right, I was talking to David about this. Yuri Vips kind of insinuated similar sort of things. I'm not sure if it was that year or with the year of Schwartzman and Armstrong, and then obviously you progress to Formula 1, which people may know a little bit more, and how Max didn't mince his words. You didn't have to fill in the gaps there. Out and out called Ferrari cheats this season. So you can say within the Red Bull brand, that they very much... It wasn't just Dan Ticktum, but with everything that went around him and go from there, it's not an outlook that looks good. And without proof, you can't, unless he came out and just, had, right, we can prove Prema are cheating by X, Y, Z there. I think everyone would be outraged and be like, fantastic, Dan, for calling this out. You cannot go around accusing people of cheating when you've been leading the championship, and then obviously he finished second in the end of the year, did he? Or did he completely fall off? I can't remember.
No, I'm pretty sure he finished second.
He did finish second.
I'll get up the old... Yes, he did finish second. He did.
So, from an outside perspective, with people with an opinion already against him, due to previous history and how he had conducted himself, it's just going to look like sour grapes. And
absolutely, yeah.
It will be what we go on to talk about. I think not necessarily, you mentioned it there, having the right people around him. You can think it, and internal circles definitely voice it, but publicly in interviews, it's certainly not the best, and his PR training certainly leaves much to be desired. But yeah, we'll move on to that still though, second in the F3 European Championship. It's still a pretty impressive achievement, It
is, yeah. And by the way, just quickly there, I think he did go to the same PR school as what William Story did, but I'm pretty sure William Story's on my case right now, so I'll just leave him alone. It's still a good effort, and it was his first full season in in Formula 3 European Championship. Again, with Moto Park, and he took it to the Premas. I think the top 4 drivers, were, bar Ticktum, were all Prema Power Team. And, that's pretty impressive. And with Motor Park, he won both of his Macau Grand Prix. So, it's all very impressive. Make no bones about it. And of course, later that year, he actually did 2 races apiece in both Formula 2 and Super Formula. And of course, that was a choice for 2019. That, as you were rightly saying, Red Bull just don't really send their drivers to Formula 2 that often. Even way back to the days of, Gasly, Sainz and Ricciardo, it wasn't really... Formula 2 wasn't really a championship that they sent their drivers to.
Yeah, and it seems bizarre. I don't know if it's... They feel they don't have connections with the teams within Formula 2 that are going to provide the platform for their drivers to secure enough super license points, but there really seems a lack of understanding of how difficult a series Super Formula is to go and compete in and to be successful in.
Yes.
And to gain the super license points. And I think actually, I believe, if Dan had finished first in that European Championship, I think he might have had enough super license to compete in F1 anyway. So it was a result of losing the championship that then led to him going to Super Formula, and then it looked like it pretty much ended his career when obviously, he after 3 rounds of the Super Formula Championship, Red Bull officially said, he's out. It's a results business. You're gone. He wasn't, again, the attitude, and speaking of his rivals and speaking of his team, rumours, obviously we don't know Dan and from there, but I think they were well founded and easy to kind of sell the narrative, that he was a very difficult person to work with, and almost toxic like in the racing community out there.
Where there's no smoke, when there's smoke, there's fire, I suppose, is one way to look at it. But you just sometimes got that from him. And I mean, if he's listening, and I know he's seen my 2 videos, so, I mean, if he's listening, I know he knows what I actually think of him. But the point is that back then, you got to think as well that, you know, a Red Bull back driver with a hot head isn't necessarily out of the ordinary. I mean, I love Max Verstappen to death, but good grief, like, sometimes there's a bit of a loose connection there between, you know, brain and action. But yeah, it really was a case of him not making it easy for himself, for sure. And, you know, when it all came crashing down in 2019, that was just the worst thing for him. I mean, I think it all started going wrong when they chose the F3 Asian Winter Series over Toyota Racing Series, because it really was a choice between those 2 ones. And when I heard that he was going to a summer series, I thought, just come to TRS, because at least here all the cars are equal, for sure. Like, I mean, there are only 4 teams here. I mean, if you go with M2 Competition, who also run in Euro Formula Renault this year, they're a dominant team. You go with them, game over, mate. Like, you're winning that championship. And back then, there was 7 super license points, but I think that may have put him into a point where he can go into either Super Formula 2, and just virtually walk the championship, and he's got the super license points. So, but then they chose F3 Asia, and I was like, okay, that's a bit interesting, because the numbers don't look very good. And of course, I think it was a grid of 13, whereas Toyota Racing Series had 20, and as a result, Toyota Racing Series got the super license points, and F3 didn't. So it didn't matter what Dan did in the Asian Formula 3 Championship, he wasn't getting anything out of it. And he got a couple of poles, and he was pretty speedy, but he just didn't quite get up to a level with which people would expect. And that was obviously disappointing, and I think Red Bull at that stage were looking at him going, what? We expected more of you from here. Okay, well, there's no super license points, so I suppose it doesn't matter too much. And they signed him up to Team Morgan in Super Formula. And, you know, I still reckon that was a bad mistake. And I think Red Bull sending Yuri Vips to Super Formula. And, I mean, I was at Suzuka watching his debut last year, good grief, in the final round. And I thought he did pretty well. But it's such a tough series. The people in there, Nick Cassidy, who really is a beast. You know, he's got Super GT titles, Super Formula title now, and, you know, I think 3 New Zealand Grand Prix, 2 Toyota Racing Series champion. He's got a lot of accolades. Naoki Yamamoto, who was really, I think it was 0.3 of a second off of Kvyat in the free practice in his first time in a Formula 1 car. Kamui Kobayashi, you know, there's a fair amount of drivers in there who are fantastic, and it's a relatively level playing field in there as well. So you're really sending him into the lion's den. But if you give Ticktum a good seat with a good team like Dams or Prema or Carlin, even, you know, again, you can just set Ticktum up to virtually walk the championship, whilst people like Galil and Raghunathan are at the back of the field making up the numbers. And all of a sudden, you've got the super license points for the year, but instead they put them in the Super Formula. And I think it goes back again to Red Bull's ideology of putting these drivers under the pump. But, you know, in the end, it didn't pay off for him, didn't it?
Yeah, it certainly didn't pay off, and I think that is a good summary of events there. And for me, the drivers you were listed off, that is the key thing about Super Formula. It isn't really like a feeder series. It's almost something in itself. There is a very experienced grid who compete within it, and only 8 rounds. And so it is very easy to, if things don't quite go your way or race doesn't go your way and you struggle to adapt to the series out there because the tracks itself are reasonably difficult.
They are unforgiving, absolutely unforgiving tracks in Japan.
Exactly.
You got Suzuka, Autopolis, Okayama, and when I went to Suzuka, I looked at I was looking at the track. I was like, how in the name of good grief are they actually getting these cars around the circuit? It looks like you can fit this thing on a tabletop. So they're very difficult tracks there, of course. Not quite the usual cookie cutter tracks you get around the world when you go to these Formula One events. So it's a difficult environment, but it will test you. I suppose that's what they were trying to do with them. But
it is, but it certainly is a very risky place to put it, and I don't know. Maybe they were unhappy of things they were doing it, and they literally sent a lamb to slaughter, and were like, he'll shoot himself in the foot there. But it's a bizarre thing, and like you said with Yuri Vips, I think it's a bizarre place to be sending Vips as well. It's and obviously Tsunoda getting the F2 seat with Carlin. You'd think on Vips' showing an F3. Realistically, there should have been the other way round, or one Tsunoda stay in F3 and Yuri Vips go to F2. But I think we'll probably, before looking ahead, obviously we mentioned it earlier with Ticktum being signed as for the Williams Academy and will be racing with Dams in F2 for 2020. Before we kind of look ahead and his future, I think we'll kind of reflect back on it, and for me it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on it. Obviously, the F4 incident was unforgivable and it set a precedent, and the karting career, I think, built an ego around him that he hasn't had the right people around him to keep him grounded. I think Dan Ticktum is certainly a young talent who hasn't been well grounded, almost felt very siege mentality, like the world's against him. I can see that in a lot of the interviews that you have with him, and obviously we only see the clips that you get to see from interviews. Neither of us know Dan Ticktum personally, and the large majority of people who have a strong opinion of Dan Ticktum don't know him personally. But it is hard when you see these things to kind of be forgiving of the bloke, but at the same time you go, these guys are young people. I thinking back to when I was a teenager and growing up, you make a lot of mistakes, and this guy's travelling around the world, being told that he's one of the best things in the junior series, believing his own hype, and clearly doesn't have the right people around him. And I will be critical of Helmut Marko here. With a person like that, Helmut Marko is certainly not going to be the type of person who will get the best out of Dan Ticktum, I believe. And the Red Bull Academy, what they ask and the pressure they put onto him, he certainly did not handle that pressure well, and it seems like a cry for help, the lashing out. The talent can't be denied. He is clearly a very talented individual still to this day, and like we said, we'll talk about what we expect from him in 2020. But the stuff around it, and in an unforgiving world, followed in social media, which gives people a greater opinion and greater say on guys even as early as his junior career. Now it is a very difficult thing to regain people's favour from what he's done in his junior career up until now. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that, Josh.
I don't think he's ever going to regain those people. The people that continue to, verbally cuss him out, who will refuse to look at him as a driver, I don't think he's going to win those people back. The important thing for him at this point is to focus on himself and focus on his own future. If I may just, I might as well bring it up now. After the WTF happened to Dan Ticktum video went off, and after he was signed to Williams, I thought, well, okay, it seems like an appropriate video, so I made a video detailing why I thought this was a good thing for him. 9 a.m. the next morning on Instagram, Dan Ticktum wants to send you a message. Oh God, oh no, okay, I better open it. And basically he came back and said, hey man, saw your videos, thought they were well balanced, thanks very much for the wishes. I was like, okay, I didn't really expect that from you. And yeah, talked a bit more, and he was detailing how he knew that he made life difficult for himself, was looking to make the most of it for the upcoming season. And I just thought, well, that's great. It's great to know that, you're aware of where you're going to, or what you're aiming for in the future. And he's had to learn it the hard way, but, if he truly does know how to contain himself for the season, then we're going to be seeing a Dan Ticktum that we really should have been seeing from the start, which is the fastest hell driver that Williams are calling one of the best drivers that they've ever seen. And you know what? I don't think it's a marketing ploy. I genuinely do think Ticktum has talent, but he's got to harness that. We're going to have to see what happens this year in GP2, or Formula 2. Oh, good grief. I got that wrong. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see from there. But in terms of attitude, I'm not sure he'll have that much of a problem this time round.
That is fascinating to hear, actually. That is incredible that he reached out to you like that. And obviously, your videos on him certainly went viral, and I think that perfectly leads on to the future. And from my understanding, I'd like to say in the kind of careers that I do, that judging people and characters, I work with people day in, day out in my cricket coaching career, and helping understanding people go on that front. But it didn't make sense to me if he hadn't shown some signs of remorse and want to change, which I think is all you can ask for Dan at this stage. If a team like Williams, yes, obviously they're probably desperate for funding at this stage, but a team like Williams...
Well, they got Roy Dasani, of course. I went into his junior career, he was okay, but nothing indicative of being... Formula One class. So, every minnow team needs the money, of course. So, I think you're going to have those people in there, but with Dan Ticktum, I think they've seen a bit more than just money in him in that regard.
I agree. I think on that, and also a team like Dams, and I would say, obviously Latifi and Nissany bring money, but they don't really have the reputation. They're still they haven't done anything to the reputation of Dan. There are certainly a lot of safer options that Williams could have gone for. So there is clearly some belief in him, talent-wise, and as a person, that he has the ability to change. And Williams as an institute, for me, are a much better place for Dan Ticktum to kind of level and ground himself than it is. And also the Formula 2 team in Dams, highly respected, one of the best teams through the kind of GP2 era and obviously Formula 2 era as well, winning the Constructors last year, having Latifi and Sergei Sete Kamara. They certainly could have refused to have Dan Ticktum within that team. And I just look at Dams and Williams and I go, he's been given a platform here. There must be some guarantees, and there must have been something that there's been a change in Dan. I don't know if he needed that kind of to be dropped from the Red Bull Academy and it to all go kind of spiralling out of control in Super Formula, for him to go, what do I really want? I really want this. Like you said, in terms of his reach out to you, He clearly has an understanding that he hasn't made life easy for himself, but there must be a kind of within himself a desire for change and to just go, I'm really talented. I've got a rare thing that not a lot of people have, which is the talent to have a shot at Formula One, which is the pinnacle of motorsport. And, I want to give this one last serious shot.
Yep, and he stated that it's Formula One or bust for him. And that's, when I heard that, I thought, it's a bit, I don't know how to feel about that, Dan boy. I thought you were in it for the love of the sport, but clearly you want that Formula One goal, and if that's your mindset, that could be, I suppose, could be a good thing. It could give you that indomitable will to reach the sport. But of course, I actually, now come to think of it, I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem for him this year, because Dams is obviously a very good team, of course. Very, very accomplished in GP2/Formula 2. So I think he'll do well this year. He's not going to have that much of a threat in a teammate. Sean Galal, he's a cool bloke and all, but sorry, dude. How long have you been in the game? I've just not quite seen anything to prove that he's going to be a title contender in the future. Next minute, he wins the title over Ticktum, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But yeah, seriously though, I think it's almost to a point when you look at what he's got for this season. Like, if he doesn't get the super license points required to be in Formula 1 next year, now keep in mind, the top 3 or 4 drivers in Formula 2 get the 40 points. Like, straight up. You can have nothing. Like, Raghunathan, technically, if he magically got even a teaspoon of talent and got a top 3 to 4 position, despite the fact that he achieved absolutely nothing right up until the point that he actually got into a series full of professionals, then he could have got that super license, God forbid. But, that's the thing, is that there are a lot of points on hand. But he's already got a lot of points, from Macau victories to the top 2 in the European Championship, Formula 3. I think he's got 25. I think he needs 10 points, from this year in Formula 2 to be able to be warranted that super license. So, and with the Dams outfit, I think he's in prime position right now. Ultimately, it's down to whether or not there's going to be an opportunity next year with Williams, but I don't think that's the case, because really, unless Hamilton or Bottas leave and Russell goes to Mercedes, because Latifi's not leaving. Like, he's got that much money in the team. It's almost like Lance Stroll in a case of, well, I guess we'll be seeing you around here a lot. But nevertheless, yeah, I think he's in prime position this year for a chance of getting the super license points. Is whether or not he converts it, which really is just going to be down to how he approaches the season.
Yeah, and I think he is one of the most fascinating cases, I think, in a Formula 2 season that is full of intrigue. It is an incredibly exciting grid this year. We obviously, by starting it on the channel, we have been covering the feeder series there, and F2 is just, we can't really wait for lights out in Bahrain in that first round. It is going to be really fascinating to see how it all unfolds, with just, so many guys with the potential to grab that chance of having the super license points. Like you say, it is the top 3 who have enough points to progress on to Formula 1. I think actually his seat's a little bit easy. I can quite easily see George Russell going to Mercedes in 2021, so that would be a seat available. And yes, Latifi has the money, but I could quite easily see him being, if he has a poor season and he really doesn't perform, he's going to have to really underperform to be dropped. But, if Dan kind of shines, I certainly can see both of the seats being available for Dan to take in the 2021 season with those new regulations. And he certainly now has the platform to perform. And I think I would love to see the talent shine through. And I would love him, because it would be an incredible redemption story. And it's difficult growing up as a young person in the world of junior Formula sport. I never done it myself, but I can only go and imagine that, travelling around the world, everyone telling you that you're pretty much the dog's bollocks. And it's, it must be incredibly tough. And if you didn't have the right people around you, which you can tell from the kind of behaviour and how it's worked out, that the supports, I'm sure obviously his family was right, but whether they weren't able to get through to him, it hasn't been his best place personally up until date. But he's got this one last kind of major shot, and what a shot and what an opportunity Dan Ticktum has in 2020 to kind of, achieve the dream that I imagine he's had since a very young kid, which is to progress into Formula One.
Crazy. I got a bit of a potentially crazy theory here. We're just sort of discussing availability of seats or lack thereof. If Ticktum gets those points and Tsunoda, and it's likely that Tsunoda may not get that top four, because if you look at the field, Mick Schumacher, Robert Schwartzman, Artem Markelov, Felipe Drugovich, Nobuhiro Matsushita, Pedro Piquet, Louis Delatraz, Marcus Armstrong, Callum Milot, Dan Ticktum, obviously, and that's only half the grid. So it's likely that Tsunoda may not get those points, but Ticktum may do. And if Yuri Vips doesn't do that well in Super Formula, which again is very much possible, we've seen Marco call up some old contacts before in the past with Brendan Hartley and Alexander Albon. I mean, I don't think Hartley was necessarily F1 worthy, but that's just personally my opinion. Ironic coming from a Kiwi, but irrespective. And I know you said that he's shutting the door on former talents, but it's not really out of the question for Marco to potentially, if Ticktum gets those points, call up Ticktum and say, we've got a spare seat at AlphaTauri next year. You want in? I don't know. May very well be. Who knows? Crazier things have happened.
I think we've quite easily seen what Helmut Marko says and what Helmut Marko does, two polar opposites of what is reality. Just ask Pierre Gasly.
Oh yes.
So, I very much feel there will be a seat at AlphaTauri. I cannot see a Daniel Kvyat and Pierre Gasly both wanting to hang around and wait out for if Max Verstappen, with Max Verstappen long term signing, at least obviously I know he'll have performance clauses in that he may still move on, but I can't imagine Kvyat and Gasly are going to be hanging around in their F1 careers, going, well, Max might move on and then Red Bull might look to us. I think they're very much looking to perform well this year and to secure seats elsewhere. So there may be one, even two seats available at AlphaTauri next year. And that wouldn't be beyond realm. And if he stays with Williams Academy and they come to some sort of agreement, it would be difficult. It would seem bizarre, wouldn't it, that I suppose Red Bull buy out Williams' kind of academy contract with him and bring him back into the Red Bull fold, because I can't actually imagine them putting a Williams Academy driver in their junior team. yeah, it would be a bizarre full circle. But
I don't know if necessarily they have much of a choice if such a circumstance arose. Because if you think about it, who have Red Bull got in their junior program right now? They got Dennis Hauger, who is not going to be ready for Formula One anytime soon. Although I think he's worthy in time. He's not going to be ready in time for next year in case Kvyat and Gasly stop screwing around in AlphaTauri, waiting for either Albon to fall out of favour or Verstappen to go to a team that's actually got a powerful engine. Then, so you got those two teams. And so Hauger's not going to be in the mix. Liam Lawson is not there either. I think he's 17, 18 years old or whatever it is. So he's still young, and as well as that, he's not got the experience required so far, despite the fact he dominated TRS last season and he's doing very well this season. He put on some great performances in F3 this year, but shone occasionally, even though he outperformed Richard Vershaw, but he's not quite ready yet either. Tsunoda, if he doesn't perform and he doesn't get the top four, it looks like Red Bull are sort of giving him a sort of do or die sort of goal here. And then you got Yuri Vips, who may not exactly excel in Super Formula, and so potentially you may have all four of those. And I should also mention Jack Doohan, who, with the greatest respect, I'm not seeing a lot of great stuff from. So you got 5 drivers there in the junior program who are either being given some extreme goals in terms of achieving stuff to potentially get them into Formula 1 next year, or are not quite ready for the seat. And so if you got a seat, vacated next year, and none of those junior teams, those junior drivers are available, but then you got Dan Ticktum, who's got the points necessary, then I think Helmut Marko may say, all right, well, we know why we hired him in the first place. Let's see if he's learned his lesson.
Yeah.
You never know.
As you lay it out like that, it's very good, and I think the only one who would kind of probably come into the category as well, because I believe he's linked with Honda, would be Matsushita if he manages to secure enough super license points, although I can't imagine so with the competitive grid that we've already said that F2 is. But I think probably on reflection on this podcast, Dan Ticktum, if he could make a mistake in his junior career, probably at every step he could have after his karting career, he has. But
yeah, I guess that's a bit of a fair summary of that, yeah.
But what underlines and underpins the fact that we still talk about Dan Ticktum and that he already hasn't been cast aside to the young driver graveyard, so to speak, of people who haven't made it in junior formula, is the fact that he is an incredibly talented driver. The Macau GP wins under it, the 2018 one in particular, probably shows his talent. The fact that in a competitive grid of guys who have been spoken highly of progressing into F1, the likes of Mick Schumacher, Schwarzer, and obviously Armstrong's kind of spoken highly of as well. He finished second within that championship for the smaller team in Motor Park against Prema, who are pretty dominant at that level of junior championships in F3. And Williams, even, the current, saying that he's one of the best drivers they've ever had in their simulator in terms of, what he is able to do in the car. So, yes, like I said, everything that could have gone wrong, and in terms of starting on the back foot with people's opinion with you, that's happened. But he still has this incredible platform, being part of Williams' academy that, can provide him a route into Formula 1, being with Dams this year, who had one of the top 2, top 3 teams. It's very much been them and ART, and then Prema obviously with Charles Leclerc before that. You know that it's one of the illustrious names within the junior formula of F2. He's got it all here, and we could still very much, maybe in 5 years' time, be talking about, you know, Dan Ticktum as one of the most exciting drivers in Formula One.
Could do. You never know.
But yeah, what would be your concluding thoughts on Dan Ticktum, Josh?
Right. Well, in conclusion, interesting career, up to date. He's got a golden opportunity this year, and I think to all the listeners out there in Watforth, let's give this guy a chance. I know he's made stuff difficult for him before in the past. The reason why I want people to give him a shot really is because we want the best talent in the world on the grid. And for however much he's ruined his reputation by being himself, he's a talented cookie. And when Williams say he's one of the best drivers in our simulator, I believe that, because you just see that in his results. You see that in the way he drives when he's not being stupid. And so, you know, in that respect, you want him to succeed. You want him to be better. You want him to, you know, realise what he did wrong in the past and learn lessons from that and take it into the future. And I think he's done that, and that's fantastic. So, really, in conclusion, let's all give him a chance, everyone, for this year. Let's hope he does well. Let's hope he, you know, doesn't do anything stupid. And to Dan Ticktum, if you're listening to this one, thank you for listening. Best of luck this season, boy. And, hopefully see you on the grid for 2021.
I think a very good summary and conclusion there from you, Josh. And just, I think just that small thing, obviously I didn't know pre-recording, obviously, that you had actually had some contact with him. You've got to show some signs of remorse in these situations, and essentially, who are you to Dan Ticktum? Not who are you, Josh? But you know what I mean. Who are you in relation to Dan Ticktum? You just a guy who's made some kind of videos on him, but he's reached out. He said, I think that's fair, and he could have quite easily. Not done that.
Shunned it, and it's very easy for people to do that. But it's funny though. When I made some videos about Dan Ticktum, he messages me back and says, thanks for the well wishes and saying my videos are well balanced. When I made a video on Taki Inoue, he shares it on New Year's on his Twitter page. So I'm really just waiting for Lance Stroll to get back to me now on that video. But it does say a lot about his character though, and I think it says a lot about where he is right now. There'll be people that'll say, oh no, it's all rubbish and what. Well, no, hey, look, the fact that he's reached out speaks volumes. So that's what makes me optimistic for the future coming forth in 2020 for Formula 2, Formula 1, whatever comes.
Exactly. You can't change the past. What's been and gone has happened. All Dan Ticktum now can control the present in how he is today and how he is in the future. And anyone who is competing in racing, I wish him the best. And if he can come back from this, if he can show that he's learnt from the difficult lessons that he's had to in his junior career to date, why shouldn't he be given a shot with the clear talent that he shows and merits? But it's been a fascinating chat, Josh, and when you suggested this as a topic when we were discussing what to do for the podcast, I think it was great because I think he's probably one of the most interesting characters who's come through the junior categories in the past few years. Obviously you've had Charles Leclerc, Mick Schumacher has the name behind him, but he certainly has one of the most interesting stories of what's happened to date in junior formula. And just thank you so much for coming on to the F1 Worldwide podcast. It's nice actually have the F1 worldwide element, because obviously you're in New Zealand. I think that was how I approached the question with you. I was like, you're in New Zealand, it's perfect.
Yeah.
So
long ways away. Yep, absolutely. Extending to all reaches of the globe.
Exactly. But
no, it's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for having me on, and we're looking forward to when this comes out.
it will indeed. I believe, this should be with you listening come near the end of February, kind of mid-end of February. I think this is coming out, maybe even the start of February, I'm not sure. But when you're listening to it, you'll know what the date is. But yeah, if you guys have come across me before Josh, I would love you to go over and check out his channel and subscribe. I think he offers, like we were discussing earlier, a unique take on things. He's found his niche, and I think he adds real value to the community, and it's very interesting just having a listen to his say on things. I mean, we all like our opinion to kind of feel validated, but no, I think you create discussions and interesting debates, and I think that's what we all love doing at the end of the day, talking about motorsport, whether that be junior Formula 1, Formula E, whatever. DTM, there's so much that we can divulge and talk to, and I think you definitely add to that conversation in a positive way. And if you are new around here, you can subscribe to our channel as well. Hope you've enjoyed this video. You can click that bell notification to keep up to date with all our latest content, all our latest F1 Worldwides that obviously are weekly through this closed season on a Thursday. And comment down below on your thoughts on Dan Ticktum, on the discussion that we've just had. Me and Josh would both love to hear, your thoughts on that. And again, Josh, thank you very much for coming on.
No worries. Thanks very much for hosting me.
No problem at all. And as always on F1 Fanatics, there is only one way to end a kind of video or podcast, and that is, for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.